See, I almost want to
you, Ricky. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am Sean Anderson, Most Valuable Podcast, and the upcoming segment is from our full Fast Break podcast that we recorded. And if you do want to check out that full podcast, head over to Blog Talk Radio /The Fast Break. You'll be able to find the full podcast over there.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is the Fast Break Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Anderson, not joined, as always, as Ricky Widmer's not here, but Dave Oster is joining me here.
Hey, everybody.
And there was a bet back in January, Dave, that was saying, I bet you Ricky's going to be kicked off by the end of next year. And look, he is. He's gone.
He
Bye,
gone.
Ricky.
No Ricky.
Bye, Ricky. He gone.
Yep.
He gone. Grab some bench. No, Ricky's just sick. We hope Ricky's doing better. He's going to be editing this. He's going to be pissed off that we're even mentioning it. I think he's even missing next week, too. So this is going to be 2 weeks without Ricky. So that means 2 weeks of the We Agree podcast with Sean and Dave. But let's get in, Dave, because we got the trade deadline. First up, DeMarcus Cousins. I already did the solo podcast, so if you do want to see full reactions, check that out. But what we're really going to talk about now, and we're going to focus on the Pelicans, is are they good enough to be a playoff team, or can they be a playoff team out in the West?
That is an interesting thing, Sean. And for those of you who didn't listen to Sean's 30-minute ranting and raving, which was super entertaining.
Thanks.
This is a Pelicans team that, they shipped out some, guards. They got back Boogie, who is a dynamic player.
No, they shipped out Steph Curry. Be real.
Want to be Steph. No,
Vivek said he's Steph.
The next Steph.
Vivek's, yeah, he's next Steph.
All right. The next Steph Curry. They got a dynamic player back in Boogie Cousins. And as we saw, we watched his first game, and he almost dropped a 5x5.
Was one steal away, I think.
Yeah. It was really interesting to watch him and Anthony Davis play together. I think that this team is going to struggle, though, and that's entirely based off of now the lack of depth at guard. I think Etuan Moore is a decent player. It doesn't hurt that Caspi got hurt in his first game, so he's gone for 4 to 6. I think that's pretty much, the final notch. It's like, yeah, if I was hoping they were going to make a push for the playoffs, I don't think they've gotten up depth to do it anymore.
And that's the thing, they were thinking about getting rid of Terrence Jones, at least in a trade, to get something in, but they just completely buy him out now. They have pretty much no depth at guard, especially now with Caspi being out. He was more of a small forward, but still, he was more of a shooter.
He was helping them as far as, the outside shooting.
A guy that can really stretch out the floor, and that's the thing. I mean, you look at that game last night, 77 points off the bench. The Rockets were able to take care of, they're usually able to take care of any bench, but they were able to just demolish this Pelicans team. And you look at the guard depth, you have Drew Holiday, Etuan Moore, and really that's about it. And guard-wise, you have Tim Frazier as well, who had a little bit of a spurt last year with Anthony Davis. But if you're going to get playing with Anthony Davis, you're going to put up assist numbers.
Yeah.
You also have Solomon Hill there now at small forward. He's decent defensively, but the thing is, I was really high on the DeMarcus Cousins trade, and if they could have brought in some more guard help, then I would have been super interested in this Pelicans team at least trying to make the playoffs. And right now, they currently sit in the Western Conference below the Kings, weirdly enough. The Kings are currently now in 9th place, and they're a game and a half back of Denver after they beat them last night. Right now, the Pelicans are sitting at 25.5 games back of Golden State. Denver's sitting 23 games back of Golden State. So they have to jump not only Portland, but Sacramento. So right now, the Pelicans are looking in rough shape. DeMarcus Cousins was fantastic. Anthony Davis struggled a little bit, was 8 of 21 from the field. So is there any hope for this year that the Pelicans can make a run? Because, guard-heavy league, and they're going pretty much full front court.
I think there is a chance, because if Drew can stay healthy for the rest of this year, which is a big if, knowing him and knowing his history, I think that this team has a crazy upside, because we watched what Anthony Davis did to start the year, which was just unreal numbers and just take over games. And now you have Boogie next to him, who together their floor spacing is fantastic. Defensively, Lord knows no one wants to go driving in the lane against them, so they can really hurt teams who are focused, scoring. I would love to see, I know probably, I don't know schedules, but Isaiah Thomas, I'd like to see if he goes just all in on driving to the lane and watch that just collide. Be awesome. But I think what they have is just an absolute black hole of offense down low. And if they focus on that, and if they get some good help from Etuan Moore, we saw him pretty good, and I think it's a little homer in me from when he was on the Bulls. I think the kids can still shoot. My big concern, though, again, is Drew's health. he's now the linchpin for this team, because if he can stay healthy and if he can help them distribute the ball a little better, I think they are a scary team, because it's just all matchup problems. And again, the Rockets are a nightmare matchup. This is a team that is just, I'm going to stand behind the 3-point line and I will kill you with threes, and there's not a damn thing that this Pelicans team could do about it. But if you come across, not every team's built like that. There's only two. Yeah. It's literally just Rockets and the Warriors. So outside of those matchups, I'm really curious to watch them going forward for the next couple of weeks. So I'm not going to give up all hope, but I think it's a long road for them to climb over, especially with this whole weird, addition by subtraction thing going for the Kings going right now.
Yeah, I mean, you lose DeMarcus Cousins, and Willie Cauley-Stein goes off for 29 points. and
29 and 10, I think, or something like that. It was pretty good.
It was something stupid. And then you look at Buddy Hield, his first game, he goes 6 of 10 from the field. I think it was 1 for 3 from three. I think he put up around 16 points. So, I mean, he had a decent game in his debut as well. So, I mean, DeMarcus Cousins, and if DeMarcus Cousins and AD are on, AD really wasn't fully on last night as well. He only was 8 of 21 from the field, but those two combined either scored or assisted on 67 of the 99 points the Pelicans scored. And you also talked about shooting there. I mean, they shot 6 of 31 from 3, and the guy that had the highest percentage was Caspi, and now he's out.
Yep.
So he went 2 of 4 from 3. So after this trade was made, I was really thinking that the Pelicans could move forward, but now with this Caspi injury, and it just takes away from their depth, and it's going to be so hard for them to overcome.
It's hard to balance that offense now too, and that's where I really see the pain coming from. The upside is, or I should say, the one final bad note for them, and I swear it's probably lopsided at this point, but it takes time to mesh. And I think a player who had a usage rate as high as Boogie, and Anthony Davis, nearly as high, if not higher. I
think
don't remember
combined
the
they had
stats.
65 usage percentage.
Something outrageous. Yeah. And it's just that's going to take some time to balance out on offense. And no offense to your coach, I'm not sure if he's got what it takes to figure out how to make these two guys mesh together and keep everybody happy. The downside is Boogie has never had a season where he's gone to the playoffs. Always been, lead up to it, get super disappointed right before. And I think that, he sees a future with Anthony Davis here. And if they do what it takes, long term, I think they've got what it takes to kind of build up a really nice team and compete in the West. But this year, I think, is asking a lot.
And before we go long term, short term, you have to look into your gut. Who is that 8th seed in the West? Because right now the Nuggets hold it. Kings might make it in and just completely screw themselves over. Because that pick goes to the Bulls then.
I almost want a dumpster and just say the Kings are going to just no logic at all, just all gut. I want the Kings to get in. I think the Nuggets are still good enough. I know they just lost, but
they lost to the Kings too.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think the Nuggets still are they're going to limp their way in.
Yeah, especially with Jokic, the way he's been playing, and Murray's been stepping up as well. I think I agree with you. I think
they've hit their groove finally.
Yeah, I think they'll hit their groove and kind of come back. I mean, obviously, coming off the All-Star break, it could just be rust, really.
Oh yeah,
and a long break kind of takes you out of the basketball mindset. But now let's move from the short term to the long term, because obviously the Kings made this move because they wanted to avoid giving Boogie a $200 million contract if they were thinking they weren't really sold on his
$209 million. Is money just outrageous in the NBA these days?
It's stupid. It's completely stupid. I just paid $209 for my credit card bill, and that's most of my money. But what I was going to was the long term, because obviously Boogie was traded, part because of his character issues, part because of the contract that he would be owed. Yep. He's got 1 year fully left. After this year, he's got 1 year with the Pelicans, and then they have to re-sign him. So if they do re-sign him, what should be the first move? Because they can open up negotiations this year. What should be the first move to pair with Anthony Davis and Boogie? Because Drew Holiday's a free agent as well after this year.
Yeah, I think that Drew Holiday, if he remains healthy through this year, I think you have to pay him. He's one of those guys. He's got something special, but at the same time, he's also just totally jinxed. And I feel for him because he has gotten hit by every injury bug known to man, and then he's got stuff going on in his personal life that takes away from the game. When he's on, and he's something special. So I think they do have to go all in and keep Drew there. And then outside of that, it's depth, and it's bench depth, and there's nothing even special. It's just you need to fill out a roster that can play around having two bigs as ball dominant as they are. You know what that does for you? That will get you open shots. So you need to go find yourself some wings and some guards who can play, 3-and-D players. And I know that's what the league all around wants to become. It's just a 3-and-D league. And so there's a high market, and I think when you're going to be paying for a lot of money to keep Drew there, and then you're going to have to worry about Boogie. If he doesn't like the team midway through next year, we're going to have the same conversation again. And I hope to God that they're able to do something in between now and then to ensure that he wants to stay.
And that's the one thing he just said recently. We know we're a bad team, so it seems like he's going to take this in stride. He knows that this team fully isn't complete. So looking at this, would you say that a three of Drew Holiday, DeMarcus Cousins, and Anthony Davis is enough? Do you think that's a big enough big three to kind of?
I think it puts you in the same realm as kind of like where the Clippers are.
Okay.
Obviously, different ups and downs for the core of each team. But I think that the DeMarcus Anthony Davis one is honestly scarier than Blake and DeAndre. DeAndre's grown a lot as a player, but he's still not close to what either of these guys are bringing. And just the fact that both of them have that outside shot as bigs, both of them have the ability to, Boogie especially pass the ball around.
Yeah.
Anthony with his ridiculous defensive dominance down low. It's something special. I feel like it does. I feel like it puts them on the same page as like the Clippers. And that they're not the top 3 teams in the NBA, but they're right below it.
Yeah, and that's one thing, too. I mean, you watched the Clippers game last night without CP3 against the Warriors. I mean, Austin Rivers was able to go up, so you need to find players like Austin Rivers, but it's going to be a little bit difficult because, obviously Drew Holiday, his contract's coming up. You're going to need to sign him for a lot of money. You just signed Solomon Hill for a super long contract, and now it's looking like it's going to bite you in the ass. You have Amir Sheik, who's getting about like $10 million after this year. You have Eachwan Moore, who's getting $8 million. You have Alexis Ajinga, who's getting around $5.5 million. Quincy Pondector still has a 2-year contract. So do you think they'll be handicapped by a lot of these bad contracts? Because they really filled them out because they needed to sign someone to get to the cap.
They nickel and dime themselves to death almost there. Yeah, it's just they've got a lot of these like mid-range contracts. Thankfully, with the new CBA, they're going to have some more money to spend. But honestly, I think they're a couple moves away. That's where I see them. It's not a this year. But like best case scenario, they can make the playoffs this year. They're going to get absolutely dumpstered, though, in a series. But next year, during this free agency period, I hope they make, on top of Drew, they need to bring in 1 to 2 more guys to help solidify that, and then they're going to need to make some moves, whether it's on draft day or, early mid-season. I think that's their best bet, is they need to keep churning this roster over to find what fits for them. And honestly, the big thing is, selling the vision of how are we going to build as a team around them. I hope they can sell that that whole plan to Boogie, because if you get the buy-in from him, I think he becomes a much better locker room presence. And, the weird thing coming out of all the interviews and everything, with the trust issues in the Kings locker room and all this, like a lot of the players liked him when he was happy. It was the fact that he was so disgruntled by the shit going on around him that really turned him off and, made him somebody you didn't want to have around your players. So I think that if the Pelicans can provide the information to him and be like, hey, this is what we're doing and we're going to follow through on it, then I think you're going to end up with like 2 really happy superstars on your team and have a really good core to build around.
And that's one thing, too, that I want to bring up is, obviously I'm not too big of a fan of Alvin Gentry. He had that one good year in Phoenix, I believe it was 2009, 2010, where they won 54 games. But outside of that, he hasn't had real success. But if you're pitching Boogie that nothing's going to change, then you're pretty much handicapping yourself keeping Alvin Gentry there. You handicapped yourself with some pretty bad contracts. So do you think they'll be able to sell New Orleans to Boogie? And do you think, looking next year and the year after that Boogie will be here on New Orleans for a long time? Because, they locked up AD. Do you think they'll be able to lock up Boogie as well?
I want to say they're going to have to... They're going to have to make the playoffs or be in really great shape to make the playoffs next year come trade deadline time. And I do agree with you. I think Gentry's the wrong guy for the job. And it's hard to say because, as a head coach, you want to – it's pretty much what can you do with the talent around you. And he had an extremely lopsided roster. You had one of the best up-and-coming players in the league in Anthony Davis, and then nothing else.
Yeah.
So unless you can figure out how to play around him entirely and cover up for all of your other deficiencies, you're going to look bad. But I don't have any confidence in him, and I don't know if the organization has any confidence in him. So I think there's going to be there's at least 3 to 4 head coaches out there who I think are available and would probably fit it better. So
who are those?
I don't want to go in names yet. I'm going to let this...
So you just think
I'm just tossing out the idea that, hey, there's some guys that'll be available this offseason, and I think that Gentry's going to get moved. Maybe we'll save that for an offseason discussion.
All right. Well, one thing you did bring up was free agency and draft stuff, because with the draft, obviously they gave up their first-round pick unless they get the top three, somehow into the top three. So if they pull off a D Rose, don't make the playoffs, and then have a 0.8% chance in the lottery, they can get the number one pick. Obviously, we'll say that doesn't happen. We'll say they lose that pick to Sacramento. We'll say they lose that to Sacramento. They don't have a second-round pick either. So it's really going to be selling people on Boogie and AD and the city of New Orleans. So looking out there, obviously we talked about guards. JJ Redick is going to be a free agent. There's a lot of players out there that could be on the move and that could help this team, at least from a three-point standpoint. Do you think that selling the fact that we have two of the most talented big men in the league on the same team will be enough? Or do you think that, with Boogie's personal issues, with AD's health, with Alvin Gentry possibly being there, with not a lot of help around them, do you think it will be enough to sell people? Do you think that just Boogie and AD alone will be enough to sell free agents?
I don't think it'll be enough to sell them. And the big question here is Drew Holiday going to get a max deal, the new max, or is he going to get somewhere in between? Mm-hmm. Because I don't think, it's harsh to say, I don't think he deserves a full max deal at this point.
Well, especially with the injuries. I mean, it's
if
tough
you're
to give a guy
only
like
going to
that a
average
max.
60 games a year, I don't feel comfortable giving you a max. I think that if his contract lands reasonably, they can go out and get some good pieces. But again, it's old school NBA versus new school, and are you going to play everybody who's winning right now is a guard center team? Well, I shouldn't say that. The Warriors are a outside shooting 3-point center team.
Stretch the floor. Yeah.
And you're going to try to sell people on, we're going to kill you down low with two bigs. I understand both of them can take the ball outside, but if you really want to abuse the Warriors, you have to play through the paint. That's where their weakness is. So it's just how well you can sell, hey, what we're doing here is going to work against these teams. And I think they need to see it. I think that you have to have a couple of impressive performances at the end of this year to give people hope. To like, all right, I can kind of see where they're going with this, because if they don't sell it during the end of this season, I have no reason to join this team.
I'm going to throw three names out there, and I'm going to say which ones should you go for. You got George Hill, JJ Redick, and then you also have Kyle Korver.
I think JJ actually came out and said after the Chris Paul signing he was staying, like 99.99% sure he's staying. I think JJ was leaning towards staying as well, so it might take an awful lot to get him out.
Let's say he tests it out. Say Chris Paul randomly says he doesn't want to stay in Los Angeles, or Doc leaves or something like that. Say JJ's a free agent. You have Jody Meeks, who's been an improving three-point shooter in Orlando. Then you also look at George Hill. Which one would probably fit the best? Because obviously George Hill is more of a ball-dominant point guard, and you have Drew Holiday if they do re-sign him. Yeah. So fitting that, would JJ be the right fit, or do you want someone who can create their own shot more? Brandon Jennings is also out there as well.
I think that Jennings is an awesome backup. It depends on how confident you are in Tim Frazier, though. Again, he looked really good with Anthony Davis paired together. Their pick and roll was phenomenal. It's just the fact that Brandon Jennings gives you a whole lot more energy and a little bit more reliance with the ball. Like Tim, no offense, Frazier, I'm saying this a lot this podcast, but I don't want to talk shit about you, but you're not on the same level.
Yeah.
I want to say that JJ Redick, again, he'd be an awesome fit anywhere. He's a player who has one of the best three-point shooting in the league, and his defense is not atrocious. He's like Kyle Korver, except he's been more consistent. Korver is going to get money this year. As old as he is, it doesn't matter.
Unless he wants to stay with the Cavs.
Yeah, he has the choice to stay with one of the championship contenders, so I don't see him leaving. George Hill would be interesting. And that's one where I kind of sit back and forth. I'm like, if Drew gets a little too pricey, I could see them turn around and like float George Hill to try to fight that. But I think that honestly, it's weird because Magic, but I think Jody Meeks probably their most reasonable option.
There's another option out there, Joe Ingles of the Utah Jazz, shooting around 43% from three. If we want to bring in three-point shooting, obviously. Hey,
I'm just saying no.
43% from three. Can't pass up Joe Ingles, man. But yeah, I see. Looking at the Pelicans and wrapping up this topic before we get into a ton of trade deadline stuff, because a lot happened. No big stars, but looking at the Pelicans, obviously Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins are fantastic, and I'm really high on Drew Holiday if he can stay healthy. But again, that's a big question for Drew Holiday. And looking at this and looking at the way everything's going, I went from pumped about seeing DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis together, and again, it was one game. Maybe I'm just completely wrong, but I'm nervous about everything that is bad, the baggage that DeMarcus Cousins brings, and the baggage that just the pressure that is now on New Orleans, because they made a fantastic trade. And I think, again, I think New Orleans dominated that trade. Even if Buddy Hield, unless Buddy Hield does become the next Steph Curry, I think they easily won that trade. And unless, the Kings draft a franchise changer with that Pelicans pick, I think that where the Pelicans did and what the Pelicans did, I think it was the smart move to show at least Anthony Davis as well that, hey, we're not afraid to make moves for you.
It's wonderful, and we've been asking for the Pelicans to show some signs of life for years now.
Seriously, and now it's just more of, can they put it together? And I think there's a lot of pressure on this front office, and I don't think it's fully going to come to fruition. And looking at Boogie and looking at Anthony Davis, the way that it's moving to a guard-centric league, I think it's going to be tough for them to get it worked out. And as much as I love DeMarcus Cousins, as much as I love Anthony Davis, I think it's going to be difficult for the Pelicans to take this to say, all right, we're going to now challenge the Warriors. We're now going to challenge the Rockets. We're now going to challenge the Spurs, because as fantastic as DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis are, they don't have the depth, and the Warriors have depth. The Spurs have depth. The Rockets obviously have depth. What they did last night, scoring 77 points from the bench.
2-6 men.
I just don't think that there's going to be enough there for the Pelicans, either on that free agency market because of the lack of salary cap, because of all these bad contracts that they have signed, to not having a draft pick. I think it's going to be very difficult to get them all locked up. But then again, Boogie is 26 years old right now. Drew Holiday is 26 years old, and Anthony Davis is 23. So do you think, how long do you think their window is? And this will be the final question. We'll wrap up.
I think they've got actually a couple years. I think all three guys.
This is if they sign them.
Yep.
Yeah.
If everybody signs, everybody's happy. I think they actually do have a couple of years. This is a really interesting team because they're not quite like, the old plan for Anthony Davis was to build around like they did Dwight in Orlando, where it's Dwight and a bunch of 3-point shooters around him, and you just play through the paint and hope to God he dishes out eventually. And I think that this team is a whole lot more dynamic because Boogie adds something that nobody else really could do, and that's have a four that is really good hands. Like I feel like he played like a guard as a kid.
Probably.
Like it's one of those scenarios where you got that growth spurt because the fact that he can get you assists, the fact that he can get you steals, he's a active player, and I think this is kind of a kick in the ass motivation wise for him, at least for the short term. So I think that this is going to be a good team going forward. And I think that they definitely have like a 3-year window to play around and figure out what they want to do. If everybody resigns, everybody's healthy, this team that can absolutely be in that upper echelon of teams.
Yeah, I think until DeMarcus Cousins hits 31, because then, if Boogie's 31, that means 5 years. That's going to mean Anthony Davis is 28, so those two will be 31 and 28. They'll be peak prime. Boogie will most likely be on the latter half of his prime there.
Downcline.
The downcline, keeping Ricky Widmer's memory alive, even though he's not dead. And Drew Holiday, I don't know if he'll be there that long, but still, I think 3 to 5 is a long enough time where 5 is definitely pushing it, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Warriors, what happens with the Spurs. But and one thing to wrap it up fully, those Mardi Gras uniforms are sweet, right?
They're pretty nice, yeah. All credit to.
They're pretty damn nice. But anyways, thank you. Oh, shit. Oh, it's just one of our videos scared me a little bit. Don't forget to check out that one. And also don't forget to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. But thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.